Other side, brothers.
Good evening. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Good evening. Welcome back to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Again, I'm the host of the show. My name is Jay. I'm excited to introduce this evening my co-host coming in from the man of the land from down under. He calls Australia home. His name is Evis Love. Welcome back, Ev.
Great to be on deck again, my brothers. Missing Josh Richard tonight.
Well, we were hopeful that at the last minute he would show up in our studio, live on set from Sony Studios, as he's wrapping up season 14 of Shark Tank. However, they're running over. He's not going to make it in tonight, but he promised us next week, without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, he will be here on Real Men Real Talk Live. But we are holding space for you, Josh. We love you. We miss you. It's been a couple of weeks. We're excited to see you back in the studio with us next Thursday evening. However, we do have Mr. Steady Eddie, Jeff Fasano, coming in from Nashville. Jeff Fasano.
Steady Eddie.
Steady Eddie.
Eddie.
Wow.
Remember Steady Eddie from New York? He was, I think, wasn't it? There was a commercial.
Crazy Eddie.
Crazy Eddie. That's what man, you remembered that.
How couldn't you forget those commercials, Jay?
Crazy Eddie. Well, you're Steady Eddie. Maybe in your younger years you were Crazy Eddie, but today
that's for sure.
Right?
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Welcome back, Jeff. You had a pretty intense week here. You were working.
I did.
Also, you were doing. I think last week we missed you. You were.
No, I was in last week.
Okay.
I was here last week.
That's right. You showed up at the
I
last.
didn't even remember. Ev.
Tell us what you were doing last week when you actually snuck into the studio in between shoots. You were working a very massive project called
Americana Fest 2022 here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Beautiful.
My the basis, the portrait sessions I do, which is the foundation of my forthcoming book.
Beautiful. Congratulations.
It was pretty crazy shooting 8 hours for 3 days. It was great. It's always great. Americana is great, not only for just shooting and all that, but seeing so many people who I have known for over 20 years. It's Nashville turns into a mecca. Not many people know about Nashville because they associate Nashville with the country music scene, CMT, that whole pop country world that is huge here. But Americana music and the Americana Fest is also very, very big here.
Beautiful. Well, welcome back, Jeff. As we take a moment here to welcome in our viewers and listeners, I want to thank you for joining us this evening on episode 122. And tonight's topic is, are you ever the same after shame? And before we jump into the topic, I want to invite you, our viewers and listeners, if you should have any questions, please post them in the comment section on your desktop or device, and we'll do our best to acknowledge as many as we can. If you should hear something that you like or love, we invite you to tap your love button on your monitor and light us up. I want to welcome back Taz James. It's been a while since we've seen you here on Real Men Real Talk Live. Welcome back, Victoria Bennett. She says she's on her way back on the road back to Sedona. We have Nancy Clarkson coming in from the valley between Phoenix, Scottsdale, and every city in between there. I know that's not where you live, but that's where you reside. And good to see you guys. She says excited to delve into the show tonight with you. Welcome back. So tonight, Ev, I want to take a moment here to invite you to kind of set us up. Maybe even before we went live, you actually set us up in the green room with a little bit of a meditation prayer. I'm going to invite you to invite our viewers to maybe close your eyes for a moment and listen in.
All right, my brothers and sisters, at your own time, just close your eyes. When you feel comfortable, get yourself in a comfortable place, a space, and allow it to be your sacred space tonight as you dive in with our brothers tonight. I want you to start taking in a big deep breath in through your nose, exhaling out your mouth, bringing our awareness to this beautiful life force we call our breath. And as you start to become aware and place your attention on this beautiful life force, I want to set an intention tonight for any brothers and sisters out there that may have experienced any shame, any blame, any guilt within their life. I want you to hold this within your heart. Don't try and do anything to it. Don't analyze it. Don't try and fix it. Just be with it, just for a second. And as we become aware of some of these obstacles, challenges, hurts, pains within our life, I simply want you to now focus on that beautiful breath, that cycle, that light that gives us life force. And now imagine the light coming through the top of your crown, in through your top of your head, intermingling with this beautiful breath that we call our life force. Now, as you take a big deep breath in, see this light come to your heart. And with your next exhale out of your mouth, I want you to breathe out any tension, any worries, any concerns, or any of those challenges. Sometimes, my brothers and sisters, some of these things that cause us any hurt, pain, or obstacles within our lives cease to exist if we lighten the way we think about them. And at your own time, bring your awareness back to your body. We're going to be diving in deep tonight, my brothers and sisters, and it's another big, deep energy show on what we're talking about with shame. And I did a video this morning just to quickly start bringing intention to this thing we call shame within our lives. And I feel it is still something that we're definitely purging here on the collective on planet Earth. And the quicker we start to purge some of these lower vibratory frequencies is going to allow more light to come into some of the pain within our lives, like shame, like blame, like guilt. For me personally, shame absolutely flooded through my life as a child. And I was definitely feeling the shame from the pressure that was placed on me to be in a perfective state, or to be in a sense of perfection with all of the areas within my life. Now, it's funny because here in the land down under, as First Nations people, it's actually a colloquial term we use quite often. Shame if you go out there looking like that. Shame, you can't say that. Shame, you can't do that. When we start to pick up these things around shame, particularly from those earlier young years of our life, my brothers and sisters, it becomes imprinted into the subconscious mind. Over time, they start to become habits within our lives. Before we know it, we start to place our validation, our worth, our value based on those people, places, and things outside of us to give our sense, like I said, of worth. Over time, we start to really abandon ourselves and we come down on ourselves quite hard. So we judge ourselves like no one else does, really. And tonight on this show, I think we could really help for just the three of us tonight. And we're missing our brother, Mr. Richard. But we're going to be able to give you some tips, tools, and tricks to help you really free that mind. We talked about enlightenment last week, my brothers and sisters. We're in an age of enlightenment, in light, menten from the Latin word menten, meaning mind, to lighten the mind and free the mind. So we can give ourselves the key to this freedom out of the cells of our mind that we may have created through our lives. So I'm looking forward to diving in deep, my brothers and sisters. I hope that set a nice intention for you tonight.
Thank you, Ed. Welcome back. Well, you said you said in your opening, I'm going to paraphrase you, but what I heard you say was if some of you brothers and sisters have experienced guilt, shame, and blame in your life, and in my mind, I went right to who hasn't? Like, if we haven't at some point been touched with the pain of shame, with the pain of guilt and blame, then I don't think we'd be having this experience called, being human. It's almost impossible for us not to be imprinted by at least one experience in a lifetime of that. I want to take a moment here to just break it down real simple, in very simple layman terms. What is the difference between guilt and shame? And my understanding, as I explored my own healing journey, starting back in 2015, where I was saddled, I had a tremendous amount of guilt and shame around choices that I had made throughout my life, most of them in my adulthood. And knowing that if I wanted to be free, if I wanted to save my life, if I was going to give myself permission to die so that I can rebirth myself and become the man I was born to be, my birthright, I had to dissolve and work through the guilt and the shame that I had been living in. And some of it was actually projected onto me by another individual or individuals, not just one. And that's something that we don't hear a whole lot about in keynote speakers and talks. How much of the guilt and shame comes from projection from other people onto us that want us to be sitting in it, in that muck, in that pain. But the difference for me between the two, and as we dive deeper into tonight's show, I will share some of my GPS system of how I navigated through it so that I can come home to be at peace with the decisions and choices that I made were in fact hurtful to people outside of myself as well as within myself. But I will say this, the difference between guilt and shame for me today is guilt is when you think you did something wrong. Shame is when you feel you are wrong. Like, did you understand what I just said? Did you get that?
Are you asking us or the audience?
Whoever wants to say yes or no, it doesn't matter. In the moment, we are the audience, right? But yeah, it's the difference is guilt is that I'm guilty. I did that, and the shame part is that we take it on in a internal, in a deeper level of there's something wrong with me. It's not that I just did it wrong, but I am that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes much more a deeper investment within us. But Jeff, I want to invite you to take a moment here to share with us. This was a topic that came forward in our production meeting a couple of 24 hours ago through an experience or two that unfolded for you this week that brought up some old shadows around guilt and shame. But this is your experience, so I'm going to invite you to, in a very eloquent Jeff Fasano way, share with us what you're comfortable sharing. What happened?
Actually, it's a great lead-in, Jay, with the guilt and shame, because this last weekend, the last Saturday night, I had a fender bender that was my fault. From wherever I was, whatever I was doing, thought I was going to be late to shoot a show. It was crazy. It was my fault. And then after that, I felt guilty about that it was my fault. And that guilt was festering and festering and festering inside of me. And then all of a sudden, I felt from my lower first chakra this energy come up, and then all of a sudden this shame just enveloped me, enveloped my being, where I couldn't let it go. I was trying to breathe through it and be with it. So it was intense. It was so intense, because what was happening is I made a mistake. It was just my fault. It was a little fender bender, but it was my fault that I did it, that happened. So then the guilt came up, and then there's some sort of, as Ev alluded to in the opening, there's some sort of perfection within me that I can't make a mistake. That should never have happened. I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. And all of a sudden that started to creep in.
Mm.
And it was a bombardment of guilt and shame. And then on top of that, embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in it. And here I am in the Ryman Auditorium with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, with the band ready to photograph this PBS special. And all of this is going on. And I wound up calling a friend that talked me through it and said exactly what Jay just said. So where I went in my mind was, I am guilty. I am this person. I just committed an egregious act. This is how dramatic it got within me. I just committed this egregious act, and I am that person.
Mm.
That's how deep it really went for me. So anyway, the night went on, and the next day came, and then it really started to, when I started to be with all of the feelings, and then a friend called me in the afternoon, and we started to process it a bit. All of a sudden, I realized how my entire life at 64 years old, all I have ever been doing is beating the crap out of myself, shaming and judging myself every single day. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. The body shame that I had, wherever it went, and a vision came up of something that I had repressed, suppressed, and buried, that I shared with the guys, of when I was a kid and my father, and how there was so much trauma around that created so much shame from it, from my body standpoint, along with other things that just started coming up and coming up. And as I processed it with my friend and realized it, I never realized how every single day I would look in the mirror at myself and not look at what was wonderful about it. I nitpicked at everything that I thought was wrong with me, not only physically, but in my life, in my career, in my entire life. It was just, and it was amazing how, when I came to that reality of what I was doing that I didn't even realize or conscious that I was doing, and then it came to me, I'm done. I made a declaration right then and there that I'm done, because what it was holding me back from was enjoying my life. Having that relationship in my life. The shame was so intense, so deep, that I have been holding myself hostage for many, many years with this shame that I have been carrying. And now I've come to the other side of it energetically. And as I acknowledged it, and as I declared with my friend that I am done with this, I literally felt the energy move, this dark, deep energy move from my first chakra through my body. And it jolted me. And it was so heavy and deep that I've been carrying for years. And it feels like right now I'm like 15 pounds lighter and so much lighter.
Beautiful.
But that had been my commitment to myself subconsciously to hold that in place.
Hey, Jeff, I want to take a moment here to invite you to take a nice deep breath in through your nose and hold it for a few moments. And then slowly release it from your mouth. One more breath in through your nose, and then hold it. And slowly release it from your mouth. And through this release, I invite you to release some of these old patterns of thoughts, of guilt, and shame, which ultimately at the base of that, the foundation of that, is judgment. And here is what's coming forward for me right now is what you've been attached to as you acknowledged throughout most of your life. It's not even your judgment. It's judgment from your ancestors. You mentioned your father. And freedom, how we free ourselves from guilt and shame, that's not even ours, but it's been like that record that's been playing over and over and over again for maybe 60 years or more, maybe 64 years, maybe since the time you were birthed from mom. You have the opportunity now to energetically, as you said it, I'm going to say it a little differently, cut the cords to that judgment that's not even yours, so you can free yourself from it. Mm-hmm. And understand that part of this process of cutting the cords, because it's like we want to do it once and be done. We want to have that perfect scissor, sharpened to be able to do that. But we know that it can be a process, and it doesn't happen with one cut. It may, for me, I went through 2 sessions to cut some massive cords to a relationship at the time that needed to happen between my mom and I. But, however, saying that, most important is to understand that, these fender benders may happen again, or another trigger that brings you in that comfort, that normal space of guilt and shame. But the difference is now that you have this awareness, you may call a friend, which is a beautiful thing to do rather than just sit in it. But there's another option too, which is you could reach within yourself and parent the younger boy, little Jeffrey, and parent him as your higher self, as your loving self, because you love that boy. I know you love him. You love him more than anyone else is ever capable of loving little Jeffrey. And it becomes our obligation and our responsibility to parent that child within and let him know that although he may have had a really, heavy trigger in the past, he doesn't have to go there, because we could bring him comfort. We could remind him that, okay, we're human. We make these mistakes. Let's clean it up. Thankfully, no one got killed. No one got injured. And you took the next indicated step in that moment, which was you reached out to a police officer in the environment and, asked for some guidance on what he thought you should do. But ultimately what I'm sharing with you is it becomes our obligation and our responsibility to parent the part of ourself that gets lit up and triggered, so that he doesn't hijack the rest of that day or evening. All right? You did the next best thing, which is beautiful. You reached out to a friend, but it is also, we have the ability to empower ourselves to parent ourselves as we continue to progress in this process of coming home. And so, Ev, what are you making of everything that Jeff just shared, and any observations from your perspective that you'd like to share?
Yeah, it's beautiful, brothers, and thanks for sharing again, brother. It really is heartfelt, Jeff, and it's interesting because when I was doing the workshop last week, a brother that was during that workshop, if he's out there watching tonight, you know, it was beautiful because it was a very similar story. But when I'd asked the people that I was serving through that workshop about certain emotions that they were feeling at the current space with a lot of changes that are going on within their lives, one of the brothers actually said worthlessness. To me, shame is really at the lowest spectrum of the emotional grid, or the emotions that we actually have as human beings. And beside that is this sense of powerlessness and worthlessness. Now, I've always said that at the other end of this spectrum is obviously emotions like freedom, emotions like love, emotions like peace, emotions that give us power. So we can actually transmute this emotion that we're talking about tonight with shame to actually give us back the power within our lives. But number one, it really does take the awareness that Jeff's talked about tonight, when he was aware that he was triggered from an old pattern, an old emotion. When we become aware of that, number one, brothers and sisters, self-forgiveness. We can't say it enough. Forgiveness, not to that other person or that other place or thing that you feel the shame from, but forgiving to you love. Forgiving to you light. Forgiving to you for the pain and hurt that this thing that we call shame has caused within your life. We can then come out stronger with shame. It can actually cause quite a lot of growth and expansion within our lives. And for me, if there's ever been shame within my life, like I mentioned earlier, from particularly those earlier years when it was really imprinted into my subconscious, that it started to ripple effect through obviously the body shame, which I felt I had to tour the world, which I really did enjoy, but I felt I had to tour the world to get validation for my body through my fitness. Whether it was through relationships, felt shame because someone may have walked out on me within a relationship. I felt guilty for that. I felt shame because they may not have had the digits in my bank account at one time. So this all comes back to these deep roots, like Jeff said, coming back to that root, to that base or the foundation of our lives, where the three S's for me, my brothers and sisters, that we have to work with is security, being self-supported, and that sense of safety. Those are the three S's for me. Once you're able to really dive in and bring love to those parts of yourself, the foundation and base within your life, then we can start rising out of those dried up waters of shame and to give us more self-esteem, which allows us to have more self-worth and self-value to bring more confidence in our lives.
I love that, Ev. I'm gonna jump on, since you just shared the three S's. I'm gonna share the four A's.
Well, that was 4 S's.
4 S's.
Not counted.
All right. So thanks, Ev. I'm going to share 4 A's, which is another tool. This isn't just for you, Jeff Fasano. This is for all of us. Every viewer watching tonight. The 4 A's. The first A you mentioned is awareness. The second A is acceptance. The third A is accountability, owning it. And the fourth A is how we pivot and release it. Cutting the cords to it is through action. If we apply these 4 principles of the A's in every aspect of our life, we can begin the journey of coming home to return to love. Now, I want to share this real quick here. I'm going to I'm going to invite you, Jeff, to respond to this. Bob Phillips says,
Uh-oh.
and I'm not sure that
Hey, Bob.
I personally have a different perspective on this, but I'm going to put it up here because I think it's important for us to acknowledge. Bob says the opposite of shame is pride.
It's not. Sorry,
Okay.
Bob.
It's okay. That's why Real Men Real Talk. That's why we're live, because
Bob,
we have a different perspective, and that's okay. What is your perspective? What is the opposite of shame?
it's the same thing. Pride is just covering up the deep-rooted shame that we have within us. Walking around with pride is just a armor. I did it. That's why I bodybuild. I mean, I pride myself on it. Now, pride is just another tool that we use to hide behind.
Who owns this tool? Which part of ourself owns this tool?
It's our ego. It's our wounded child. Okay. All right. So when I was younger, I was overweight. I was the fat kid. I've mentioned on the show on many times, and that was a source of my shame or my body shame. But I was bigger than everybody else back then. I weighed much more than them. I weighed 150 pounds when I was 10 years old. I weigh 165 pounds at 64 years old. I also was a kick-ass baseball player, football player, hockey player. Everybody chose me first. That was my development of this tough guy pride thing. That was the beginning of my armor that I was shedding around myself. I developed a tough guy persona, even though I was hurting with shame inside of me because of being the fat kid. But nobody's ever said it to myself. And because I was a wonderful athlete and really good at all three sports, I was always the first guy chosen. Everybody wanted me on their team. So that was what I used to begin to cover up and repress and suppress all those feelings of shame. Pride, for me, I shouldn't have said no. I just disagree with Bob. Pride, for me, is a defense mechanism.
Okay.
That holds us in that shame.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that experience. I do want to say a few things. First off, Bob, I brought this up because it really stood out to me, because something that Evis said it in a pre-show warm-up earlier today. He used the word that is what I have used to embrace in my life in the last 7 years, and a word that has so much positive power within it. It doesn't come from the egoic mind. It comes from the heart of the soul. And that word that you used, Deb, is gratitude. So the opposite of shame could be gratitude, meaning that when I am able to walk myself off the ledge of guilt and shame and just absolute, self-deprecating, judgmental thoughts around a choice I made and how I may have hurt or harmed myself or others, and I have that awareness and I'm able to walk through it with dignity and grace and with love in my heart, 99% of the time what I experience is this inner feeling of gratitude, because I'm then able to measure the progress that I've made. And Bob, I know you've experienced gratitude, significant gratitude in the last year or less, multiple times. I've witnessed it. I've seen it come through. And it has been such an honor to hold that space with you and for you as you've navigated through those incredible, beautiful moments. As a matter of fact, we witnessed it here in the post-production show with Real Men Real Talk Live just maybe last month or so ago we had you spontaneously come into the studio with us in the green room after the show, and you expressed gratitude through tears. And that is the most powerful power tool that we have in our arsenal when we are hurting, is reach for gratitude. Think about what are the little nuggets, what are the little positive experiences or things that we have in our life today that can help us navigate through shame or guilt. I want to switch gears here real quickly and talk about blame. What role does blame have in this relationship between guilt and shame, and why do we go there? And how does it really help us? Does it serve us, or is it another form of just gaslighting to an extent, gaslighting our truth? And or is it another form of, is it armor to protect us rather than take accountability? Tell us a little bit about blame, Ev, in this moment.
I think you just hit it on the head. Like, it depends whether you're blaming self or you're blaming others for some of these situations within your life. It's just this repetitive behavior that, like you mentioned, allows us not to really confront what is really staring us in the face when it comes around with shame. So we may blame consistently and constantly ourselves if we are in ego space, like Jeff was saying. We may blame others, so we can be in much more of a victim state, like I said, so we don't have to feel through some of these emotions that are causing shame within our lives. So when we come from spirit or soul, we don't blame anything. We don't blame anyone. Like I said, we forgive ourselves. We become fully accepted, like one of Jay's A's. And then we can just show gratitude for how far we have come through the shame. We don't have to keep blaming ourselves, my brothers and sisters. But if we are stuck in ego mind, it will constantly want to repeat the cycle so it feels alive.
I could, going through what I did for a couple of days, and the stuff that came up surrounding mom and dad, I could blame them and keep on blaming them for the source of my shame, my guilt, my embarrassment, my judgment of myself that was imprinted in me. That's where it came from. It was imprinted in all of us. And that's where it all comes from. Now I could sit back and say, fuck mom, excuse my French, fuck dad, and keep on blaming them, or take responsibility for where I am right now and say, you know what? The imprint's there, the programming's there, the conditioning's there. You've heard us over 120 odd shows talk about all of that, which it's there. Even if dad came back today, rose from the dead, and came to me and said, I'm sorry, I'm the cause of your shame, your judgment, your self-judgment, that wouldn't change a thing because it's already there. So I couldn't even look him in the face and I blame you. So if we keep on that blame, as Ev just said, then we're just claiming ourselves a victim. Then it's about, that, and that blame is not coming from us, the adult. That blame wouldn't be coming from me, the 64-year-old man. That blame's coming from a 13-year-old wounded boy that probably wanted to tell dad back then, So it's about reparenting that little boy inside of us. But then taking a responsibility for our life. As Ev said, this is really all about taking back our power within us as an adult. When I was doing this just a couple of days ago, I felt powerless. The shame within me had so much power over my life that I didn't even realize it. And that is the shame of all of my wounded little boys inside of me. Until now, as an adult, I'm going, you know what? I'm done. I will now begin the process of being with all of those wounded little boys when they pop up heretofore in my life.
Yeah, Jeff, you bring up a beautiful, valid point, and I just wonder. Of course, we won't know the answer, but we could all surmise. What is the percentage of adults that live in the victimhood mentality of they're into guilt and shame, but instead of taking, the 4A approach to it, they take the blame approach because it's the escape clause,
Yeah.
and they don't have to hold themselves accountable. They'd rather hold a caretaker accountable for their pain through blame. And that was me. I mean, I did that. I didn't just do that on occasion. That was me as an adult. I held people to blame for all of my unhappiness. And it was, like you, Jeff, it was primarily my mom and dad. On occasion, it was an ex-boss or a company I was employed by. That was always an easy one to target.
Right.
And then I had a supporting cast. That was my ex-wife. She did it as good as I did. We supported each other's blame game. And so when I wasn't blaming my parents, she was blaming hers, and I was blaming hers, and she was blaming mine, and it was a 30-year relationship, and it never served my relationships outside of myself. It never served the most important relationship in my life. Wasn't with my mom or my dad. Wasn't with my ex-wife. Wasn't even with my 3 beautiful sons. It was within me. It was the relationship within myself. And when I literally woke up in a hospital, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in 2015, I knew that the only gateway to freedom was within. The only gateway to freedom was, for the first time in my life, I had to be willing to take accountability for all of my guilt and shame and stop the blame. Now, I will tell you this. You've heard this before, gentlemen. It's been a process. It was very easy. It was easier for me to navigate through that healing journey of self. It took some time, though. It took about 5, maybe almost 6 years, I think, of the essence of truly being ready to forgive mom and dad and my ex-wife, because those were the easiest targets to hold on to the blame for all of my woes in my life as an adult. The reason it took that long, that it took 6 years, is because before I could focus on forgiving people outside of myself, I had to first learn the true, profound essence of self-forgiveness, of what that can feel like, of what that can, how it would change everything about my mind, body, and soul. So we grow up in a society where we go to church, we go to temple, we go to whatever faith or religious organization we go to, and the preacher talks about, you got to forgive, you got to learn how to forgive, you got to forgive. And they're always talking about forgiving of others. The biggest challenge with that is that they don't lay out the roadmap. They don't give you the GPS to bring you to the promised land. And then when you struggle and you leave and you go, okay, I'm going to forgive, and then 3 months later you haven't been able to navigate through that, then you start to go, where? Back to guilt and shame. There's something wrong with me. What's wrong with me that I still am angry at my freaking parents? Why can't I forgive them? There's something wrong with me. And then we start to beat ourselves up, and then we're back in that rotation thing one more time for one more year, one more decade. And that's the stuff that gets us sick. That's the stuff that eventually wears us down and tears us down, and we end up with medical conditions. Right? So if we want to be free, if we truly want to be free, now it doesn't even matter. You know how many people have parents, Jeff, we can talk about it. that have transitioned. They're not even alive, and we're still angry at them. We're still blaming them for all of our unhappiness in our life, for all of our pain. Yet we throw this word around like we dishonor it every day. Rest in peace. RIP. But we're the ones who are not giving them forgiveness to rest in peace. That's on me. And when am I going to show up and grow up? You know? It's time for us as adults to show up and grow up. And for me, that means stop blaming people that have hurt us or harmed us. You know, one of us was attacked last night, close to midnight. I'm not going to disclose who it is. It doesn't matter. We as a show were attacked last night, close to midnight. And an individual had a personal assault. Not physical, emotional. You know who you are. But I got triggered by that. And then I got to spend today. I invested my day in working through that process of that attack because it hit me right here at my heart. I felt your pain as my co-host, whoever you are, you know who you are. And then I realized that it wasn't just your pain. It lit me up. It brought me back to a lot of the things I did in my younger years that were hurtful and harmful to other people. And then I landed. Did I land? I landed in a healthy space I always want to land in. And that was empathy for this poor woman who is still suffering, holding on to pain from when she was a teenager. Clearly no healing. Clearly a very wounded adult child. And I got to really lean into empathy for her. And like that, I was free. Like that. What do you make of that, Fasana?
I kind of wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about all the wonderful things that happen when you move through the shame.
Beautiful. Let's do it.
As I move and release energetically, going through the beginning stages of it, what I've realized is how I've kept people at arm's length away from me, how I've isolated and separated myself from people, how we talk about gratitude, and I gave that a good shot when I was going through all of this and going all the feels. I couldn't even find that within this process at the very beginning because of the shame and judgment that I had of myself. I mean, why should I be gracious and have gratitude for anything? I don't deserve that. That was my shame and my judgment of myself. And as I moved through it and then realized it all, opened up to it, began the process of having acceptance with compassion where I was in my process, because all that was happening is I was moving through another layer of my process, a very core, deep layer of my process in this lifetime, in my personal process. And I knew it needed to happen. And as I moved through it and I allowed myself to be in the soup of the feelings, as much as I wanted to get rid of all the feelings, they were so strong and so deep, but I was in them and I had to be in these feelings. I had to give myself back to myself in those moments. And as I did that and the energy moved, and then I made that declaration, the energy moved, all of a sudden my heart opened. Because all of this shame and judgment was simply creating armor around my heart to keep me safe, to keep me protected from what caused the shame and the judgment. And then all of a sudden, I felt a lightness and my heart opened. Then all of a sudden, the gratitude came in, and I started thinking about all these wonderful people in my life who honor me, who are in my life. These guys. It just was all of a sudden, and it flooded my heart because finally I let go of this core energetic armor that I had around my heart to protect me from what caused the shame, the judgment, the blame, and all of that good stuff, and then take responsibility for it. Then all of a sudden I realized, oh, my life is pretty friggin' damn good. The people in my life are beautiful, wonderful people in my life who have always been consistent in showing me love, but I didn't have a place for it to land because the shame and the judgment was so deep that there was no place in my heart space for any of that to land. And then I opened, and then this flood of vulnerability came in. And I felt raw and open and exposed, probably for the real first time in my life. And then I went through that process. And then all of a sudden I started to feel this graciousness and this gratitude and a more empowerment. I moved from having those little boys run my life to me being in charge of my life now. It's still a work in process, and I'm doing it and moving through it. But man, it's a wonderful thing. So the answer to the question, which is the title of our show, are you the same after shame? You're not. You come out the other end, the other side, as an adult in charge, loving every aspect of yourself. And you're not that person that you were shaming and judging. I'm not the same person I was on Saturday. I'm now a person that is opening up and now can finally understand what the hell gratitude actually is, but not understand it in my head. I'm starting to feel it so deeply inside of me that every time I do it, it brings me to tears. And one other thing, and I know I'm going on, is that I am part of a men's group here. And my friend asked me to share what happened, not so much the physical part, that if that little fender bender didn't happen, I wouldn't be here talking about it. That is the 2x4, the cosmic 2x4 that nailed me across the back of my head, that woke me up and brought all of this shame, judgment, blame to the surface. And he asked me to share it in our men's group this past Monday night. And I shared the experience. And in so many ways, these guys, these men who are beautiful, beautiful men in my life, started opening up and sharing their shame with the group. Stuff that I've known guys now for 4 or 5 years, and I never knew aspects of their life that they started to share because my friend asked me to share my experience with the guys. And then all of a sudden they felt safe to share with the group what they were doing. And it turned into this wonderful, healing, energetic atmosphere on Monday night. So these are all the wonderful things. And this is the reason why we do this show, folks. To share all of our experiences, to show you that it's safe to have all of this. The reason why I connected with people is because they provided a safe place. They didn't want to dissuade me from what was going on. They just says, I'm here and I love you and I'm holding a safe place for you to go through what you need to go through.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing it. Jeff Fasano. What time we have left? We have about 6 minutes to the hour. I want to respect our hour show this evening. I want to invite each one of you guys to, starting with you, Ev, to share a little bit, maybe, closing thoughts around guilt, shame, and blame, and of course, what we haven't covered tonight, perhaps even leave us with, if you could, what comes to mind in this moment, one thing that you are most grateful for this evening, as opposed to something that you're choosing not to live in lack around.
Yeah, it's been another beautiful show, my brothers and sisters. And look, there's many things here tonight. I'm going to definitely listen to this replay. That could definitely trigger someone maybe out there tonight, brothers and sisters. So if it has, just really sit with some of those emotions and feelings like Jay and Jeff have spoken about, and don't be too judgmental on yourself. You know, we lay the finger on ourselves so hard, my brothers and sisters. And I'll put my hand up, man. I was one of the hardest because of this idea around perfection. In the collective at the moment, I think if there's one thing that you could walk away with tonight and really listen to think about, is that be very aware of where you're placing your attention and focus. You know, we generally shame a lot of our stuff based on the external environment. I opened up tonight and I talked about, well, all we're trying to do here, my brothers and sisters, as we get into this age of enlightenment, which we talked about, is just reconnect back to ourselves. Only then can we reconnect back to source and make this divine union between this divine masculine and sacred feminine, as we always speak about. Now, when we move through some of these things, I've always spoken about it. Jay's always spoken about it. One real gateway to really bring yourself back home and reconnect so you're not so judgmental on yourself. Take care of yourself, brothers and sisters. It's been my life work to share with people on self-care. Think about where you're placing this attention and focus. Are you comparing to others what they have within their lives? This imaginary story that we tell ourselves over and over, we must really do the mental laundry daily. And what I mean by that, as I talk about this age of enlightenment, to lighten mind, is to really clean out some of your daily thoughts, some of the self-talk that we may be talking about ourselves, the shit we come up about ourselves, some of the emotions and feelings that we have to constantly do a cleanup at the moment. Now, Jeff spoke about a cosmic 4x4 hitting him over the head, and there's 6 planets in retrograde, my brothers and sisters. And if you ain't feeling those energies, for you to be pressurized and molded into the diamond that you truly are, and you've got to watch a few more episodes on that Real Men Real Talk Live.
Beautiful. I just love that, Ev. Thank you. I don't know if you answered the only question I asked you. I'll just repeat it. One thing that you're grateful for.
I'm absolutely grateful for the show, and just to see how far we've come. Because I know we've spoken on shame before, brothers. And the thing is, you know, I feel like even from that previous show on shame, I can feel the growth just from our brothers on the panel tonight.
All right, Jeff, you're up, man. Closing thoughts. You got 2 minutes.
I think I gave them, but what I'm grateful for is first myself for going through the process that I did in the last couple of days. I'm grateful for you guys. I'm grateful for all the people who support us. I'm grateful for Josh, and all the people who care about me, and grateful that I can now open my heart to begin to really receive love now from an adult perspective. The thing that I encourage people who are going through this self-judgment and self-shame is to allow, like, if you're going to acknowledge it, acknowledge that it's there. And then if you need to seek help from others, do so, which is what I did. But not to dissuade you or try to make things better. For just the support to know that someone is there that's holding a safe place for us to go through the process. We don't want to, the best thing we can do, and what I found going through this, is to go through it. I have in my life repressed and suppressed it for so long, which is why it came up as if it was an explosion within me. But what I knew is, as much as I tried to get rid of the feelings, the stronger the feelings were there. So if I allowed myself to be in the soup of it, breathe, process it, go through it, feel the feelings, move the energy, then I could come out the other side of it and then gain a greater perspective of everything, which is when I got my enlightenment, my clarity, and my aha moments.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeff. And I also want to thank you for showing up tonight, sharing your truths, telling on yourself, sharing it with the whole world. I mean, Everest is coming in from as far away as Australia. We have viewers coming in from Scotland and all over the Netherlands, London, Canada, Mexico, USA, all over the world, even as far away as India, sometimes in Pakistan. We all human, and we all have a heart, and we all have a head. And you both touched on it tonight. And we can't break free of the self-deprecating thoughts, feelings, and emotions utilizing the same thoughts that got us into this deep abyss in the first place. We try because that's what we're taught, think your way out of it. At least that's what many of us are taught in belief systems in the US. But I will tell you that it doesn't work for me anymore. When I have the awareness that I'm in a thought pattern that has me in a low vibrational essence of feelings and emotions about self, I take action. And the first thing I do is what Everest does over in the land down under. I go out into the land. I go out to bushwhack, as you might say. I did that today. It was forecast rain in the afternoon, and you know what? It rained. I got a little wet, but you know what? Maybe that's what my soul needed, to be cleansed today, so I could get some clarity. They say rain clears the pollution in the sky. Well, rain also cleared some pollution in my thoughts today. And I was able to land right where I knew was the healing space, which is empathy, love, patience, and gratitude. And what I'm most grateful for is that I had my awakening, that I awoke as I was hours from my last breath. And I'm glad that I had that experience by myself, because if I hadn't, I may not have awoken, because I always had a blanket to land on. It may not have been the color I liked. It may not have been the size that I liked or the shape that I liked, but it wasn't serving me. I needed to learn how to land on my own. I needed to learn how to show up and grow up and take care of that little boy inside that still was living in guilt and shame and embarrassment of self. And didn't like myself because there wasn't a whole lot of love to love. But through this process of coming home, I returned to love, what we call self-love. And through that process, I'm now able to love other people. I'm able to love women in a very platonic way, but in a very deep, profound way, as well as men at the soul level. And with that, God, do I love you guys. Thank you for showing up in my life. Right on time. And with that, viewers, thank you for joining us this evening on episode 122. Real Men. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Whoa.
Hey.
Josh,
What's up, Jeff?
Josh,
Who's
that was right home.
So that's the strategy. Show up as we're about to put the song on.
Yeah, really.
You're about to put what on?
The song. We're about to close. We're still on air.
Oh wait, I'm here. I made it.
You made the last.
Well, hey Josh, I know you're driving right now. I don't want you to have a fender bender like Jeff had last week. So,
Right.
but welcome back. We are excited to see you. Stay in the studio for the after show tonight. We'll see you next week live on Real Men, Real Talk Live.